What is up, you guys? Teller checking in for UFC Grasso versus Shevchenko 2. Of course, we have the Women's Flyweight Championship of the World on the line with the immediate rematch taking place. Listen, you guys know I've always been very high in Valentina Shevchenko. She's now 35 and a half years old, and she's coming off a couple of questionable performances. Alexa Grasso, on the other hand, entering the prime of her career. She's now 30 years old. She's looking phenomenal out there. You guys are going to have to stick around to see how I think that fight's going to go down. Of course, we'll start with the first fight. We'll work our way up to the top. I apologize getting this video out to you guys a little bit later than I wanted to. For those of you guys that have been keeping up with me, just was coming off a little vacation over the weekend, coming off another profitable event. Hopefully you guys caught my recap of UFC 293. We've been absolutely smashing these cards for the last 2 months, and I don't expect it to stop this upcoming weekend. So just a heads up there, if you're looking to work with me, do not hesitate to reach out. We have been on absolute fire. As you guys knew, eventually we were going to start to pick things up. This year has had its ups and downs, but over the second half of the year, things have really been rounding out. And you guys know, long term, the Teller always does what he does, man. We killed it for 2022. We killed it for 2021. And like I said, we're going to continue to hammer 2023 all the way to the end of the year. So we'll jump into the first fight real quick. But if you could, please smash that like button. Catch me on all my social media, on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _. I'm on Twitter at the MMA Teller. All right, guys, let's go get into this first fight.
Welcome to the show, this the MMA Fortune Teller. Yeah.
The MMA Fortune Teller.
The Teller.
Kicking the card off, we have a women's strawweight match between Josefine Knutsson taking on Marnic Mann. Both these fighters have fought on Dana White's Contender Series, and of course, Knutsson just fought very recently. Didn't get the contract. I thought she actually looked pretty good out there. I want to talk a little bit more about that performance here in a second. She's 6-0 as a pro in MMA. She has the kickboxing background. As you see, we have no graphic for her here, but you know, I think that she has a face that you should get a little used to seeing. I think this is a fighter that can definitely hang around in the UFC. She's a very professional fighter. You see Dana White with the comment here, "You are all class. Can't wait to see you again." Okay, so that was even after she didn't get the contract. So little signs that Dana White was keeping her in mind, which I definitely thought was the case. Dana was a little hard on her, wanted to see her have a little bit more of a killer instinct in there. But let's not make any mistakes for what we were watching when we saw her perform. She was really doing her thing in the cage that night, man. She landed some heavy leg head kicks, kicks in general. She landed some sharp, crisp striking. She wasn't necessarily looking to just go out there and steamroll her opponent, but again, she was controlling that fight all the way through, and I think that she's a very professional fighter. And like I said, I wanted to talk about that performance a little bit more because there's something that you guys got to keep in mind. You know, if you're on the same page as I am, right, it's not always about fighters going out there and just delivering a wild show that just entertains us, right? We are betting on these fights. And when I think of a girl like Josefine Knutsson, this is a fighter that is going to play things safely, but still she's also going to be aggressive at the right times, I do believe. And I think that this is a fighter that's very professional and a fighter that when she has the right line next to her name, she's a fighter that you want to back. Now, that being said, we're going to get to the betting line here in a second, but you know, she is not the largest fighter for the division. Neither is Marnic Mann. Marnic Mann was knocked out by Bruna Brazil on Dana White's Contender Series. She got hit with that head kick. I think that she will be vulnerable to being hit with a head kick in this fight. I mean, she just showed that in her last second to last fight. She rebounded with the victory over in LFA against Amber Brown. Amber Brown is 7-7 as a pro. Okay, that really didn't impress me that much there, and I still have some question marks in regards to Marnic Mann with how she performed against Bruna Brazil, just being teed off on there. I know Marnic Mann is a tough fighter. She'll come forward. She's aggressive. If she's going to have a shot in this fight, she's going to have to use her wrestling, and she's going to have to make things very ugly. She's going to have to close the distance off, use her wrestling, and potentially, take a decision, maybe squeaking in some grappling, getting on top, maybe just kind of smothering Knutsson a little bit. I don't see it. I think Knutsson's footwork's going to be too much. I think she'll avoid any of those types of situations, and I think she'll slowly tee off on Mann. I think the question is does Knutsson go out into this fight with more of a spark lit under her, as she now knows she didn't get the contract in her last fight. She wants to go out here and really, kind of make a statement. But at the same time, she's fighting in the UFC already now. So she goes out here and gets a victory. I mean, it's not like the UFC is going to let her go, right? She gets a victory. She gets another fight. Yeah, I have a feeling that she'll play it somewhat safe, but you still have to be careful with the dangerous kicks that she throws and the dangerous striking that she throws out there, periodically. Occasionally she'll throw a nasty strike out there, and it could knock Marnic Man out. So there's some potential for that. I'm gonna give you guys a heads up. I got Josefine Knutsson taking this fight. She opened as a minus 550 favorite on Bovada, and you guys remember this fight was just newly matched, as Knutsson was taking this fight on short notice, taking on Jasmine Lucindo. Lucindo pulls out. Now Knutsson takes on Marnic Man. So both these fighters, just finding out about this fight relatively recently, understand that Knutsson just fought. I think that she'll be in phenomenal shape. She seems to be a very professional fighter, seems to be in great shape. Open as a 550, dipped to a 450, and she's now a minus 600 on Bovada. She's a big favorite. I know some people are questioning a line like this, especially with a fighter that doesn't have that much experience. I am on the other side. I'm not saying that you should necessarily target this as a bet, but I feel pretty damn comfortable that Knutsson's going to go out here and kind of outclass Marnic Man. That's how I'm feeling about it. I think that this chick's pretty good. Charlie Campbell taking on Alex Reyes. Alex Reyes, the brother of Dominic Reyes, a fighter that is coming into the cage off a long layoff. I believe he's had some health issues and whatnot. You understand that his brother obviously is a long-time legitimate UFC fighter, a fighter that in some eyes should have been the light heavyweight champion of the world at one point in time. He's coming off a knockout against Mike Perry. He got knocked out in the first round. That was back in 2017. That's 6 years ago. This guy's coming in with some serious asterisks next to his name. With a layoff like that, he's now 36 years old. And guess what? You take a look at his resume, even going into that Mike Perry fight. You take a look at the wins that he's had against very low-level competition. I really don't believe that he's that proven of a fighter at all, even if he's coming back healthy, even if he's been training very diligently, as you see him with guys like Marab right here. You also see him over here at Robert Drysdale. You see him brushing shoulders with some serious grapplers, and that could potentially be an avenue that he would want to use to get the job done in a fight like this, because I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Charlie Campbell on the feet. Even the loss that he took on Dana White's Contender Series, where he was knocked out against Chris Duncan, who has proven to be a very tough outing. He's a good fighter. He does have his own defensive deficiencies as well, Chris Duncan does, but he's a tough dude. And in that fight, let's not forget that Charlie was beating the brakes off of Chris Duncan, and if he would have just slowed the pace down a little bit, he was on his way to finishing Chris Duncan, and probably would have already had a fight or two under his belt in the octagon. That being said, he went out and had a grappling match against Walter West. He won a decision there, and then he went out and got another knockout victory. He knocked out Josh Straker, and that was over at CFFC, and that's where he's had the majority of his fights. He's a longtime CFFC product. I believe he was the former champion or the current champion, I believe, coming into this, or I forget exactly. I know he was the champion at one point in time, I believe. Anyways, Charlie Campbell is a dangerous fighter, 28 years old, training with Sarah Longo and all them. He's only going to be a much better version of himself going into this fight compared to anything we've seen from him. That I truly believe that. I think you really can't question that. With all the question marks we have in regards to Alex Reyes, how can you back him here? I think Charlie Campbell probably gets a knockout. Not that Reyes has a long history of being knocked out. We talked about the Perry knockout. That was the only time he's ever been finished via knockout. But a guy like Charlie Campbell, man, he's an accurate striker. I think he's only going to be more dangerous. Like I said, I'm taking Charlie Campbell by finish. I think that the ring rust, the cage rust from not being in there for so long, I think that the speed is going to surprise Reyes when he's in there. And I don't know, maybe he has a chin like his brother. His brother's been getting starched as of recently, and as they get up in age. But then again, Reyes took some serious blows, and that's obviously what led to the diminishing of his chin. Let's go take a look at the betting line here, which I should have mentioned earlier. I'm going to tell you now, there is a lot of very heavy favorites on this card. Charlie Campbell opened up as a minus 384 on Jazz Sports. He's now a minus 451. And you take a look at all the different books. He's a high favorite. He's a potential parlay leg, I would say, or maybe you want to target him getting a knockout. you target that knockout prop or an under 1.5, something like that on him. But I would caution you at the same time because there are some major question marks going into this fight. Again, Alex Reyes coming off a 6-year layoff. He does train with some serious fighters. You see him surrounding himself with some serious dudes. Has he really just been taking this comeback extremely serious, and does he shock the world? It really depends how you want to look at that. But I'm telling you, Charlie Campbell is the real deal. I think he's a legitimate UFC caliber fighter. Tracy Cortez is taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. This is a solid fight here, without a doubt. The winner of this fight is really going to have some momentum leaving it. Tracy Cortez, I do believe she's no longer with Brian Ortega. I think that, I hope I'm not just speaking out of my ass. I believe that was the case, right? They broke up or whatnot. I think a breakup is always great for a fighter. I think it lights a fire under them. If any of you guys ever been in a bad breakup before, I mean, that will put you in some of the best shape of your life. That'll make you work harder than ever. She looks to be in phenomenal shape here. And Tracy Cortez comes in with the wrestling background, which will help her against Jasmine, which is interesting, right? Jasmine, the Canadian fighter, doesn't really have a polished wrestling pedigree, but really has used her grappling to stifle a lot of her opponents and has used it to go out there and take girls out. I mean, we've seen her taking girls down like Miranda Maverick. Kay Hansen used her grappling to really hold her own against Kay Hansen. Against Julia Palestri, who we just saw get a big victory in Dana White's Contender Series. That victory looking better these days as well. Julia is a solid fighter. I mean, she has some big wins under her belt. Julia is a solid fighter. Kay Hansen's a good fighter. Miranda Maverick's a very good fighter. The victory over Gabriela Fernandez. The one loss was a decision loss to Natalia Silva. Natalia Silva, you guys know, has looked phenomenal. So that loss really not looking that bad right now. Tracy Cortez has been looking pretty good in her own right. It's worth noting what she's been doing. She used her wrestling to really stifle Melissa Gatto. Melissa Gatto has been, she's shown that she's a dangerous fighter. Before that, a victory over Justine Quiche, Stephanie Edgar, Vanessa Mello, Maria Agapova, Erin Blanchfield. I would say the Erin Blanchfield victory, of course, stands out beyond any other fight on her resume. Although it was a while ago and Blanchfield was much younger at the time, Tracy Cortez is a good fighter. She's 10-1 as a pro. She was submitted one time earlier on in her career. And, this is a fight that I've been very torn on, if I want to be honest with you guys. Tracy Cortez, I love the work that she's getting in over at Team Fight Ready. I am very high in that gym, as you guys know. Is it worth noting? I don't even know if it's worth noting. Tracy Cortez almost has 1 million followers at this point in time. Seems to be dabbling in some type of modeling or whatnot. And I'm sure she's making some good money outside the cage. And I wonder, even though I talked about the breakup and whatnot, but I wonder what kind of motivation she has compared to a girl like Jasmine, who just seems to be nitty gritty and just, she just seems to be really just grinding and looking to push her way towards the top and try to break into the top 15. Let me cut to the chase here. I like Jasmine. Jasmine has came into a couple of her recent fights as an underdog, and she just continues to deliver. She has amazing cardio. All right, she has amazing cardio. She's very well-rounded, and she's just one of those types of fighters, man. Not to bring up Sean Strickland again, because I know I've been killing you guys in IG with the Sean Strickland content, but she has a little bit of like a Strickland type of thing. When you think about some of these fighters, sometimes you guys are only looking for these flashy type of attributes that these fighters have. Jasmine has kind of that X factor with the cardio and just being extremely tough and just marching forward and doing some things better than what you realize, because it's not so flashy. I'm taking Jasmine here. I'm taking Jasmine to push the pace on Tracy. I know Tracy has solid wrestling. Jasmine might get taken down early on, but she'll make Tracy work. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jasmine's the fighter that's on top in the third round. I like the reach advantage that she has. She almost has a 3-inch reach advantage. She is much taller. She has about a 3-inch height advantage. She's more rangy. She could use her awkward striking maybe to land from the outside. And I've been a little bit back and forth with who I was going to go with here. But this girl, Jasmine, just continues to impress me every time I tune in and watch her. So I am going to take her. Right now, she is a minus 104 on my bookie. She was a plus 104. She was as much as a plus 104 underdog, which isn't that steep, but she was a slight dog. There's a slight lean towards Tracy Cortez's way. The line's been a little bit all over the place. It's understandable because when you watch tape on both fighters, they're impressive. So, I mean, I could really see people gravitating towards either fighter here. Again, Cortez has the more polished wrestling background and pedigree, but Jasmine makes it works in the cage. A Canadian mixed martial artist, kind of like a GSP type style fighter that doesn't really have that wrestling background, but makes it work in the cage. Just a natural grappler and a natural fighter. Give me Jasmine here. In the men's flyweight division, we have Edgar Cháirez taking on Daniel Lacerda. Lacerda, 27 years old, still very young. He has some skills, but this guy continues to drop the ball, and he's coming off quite a couple losses here. You can take a quick look. He just got knocked out by CJ Vergara. He was knocked out by Victor Altamirano before that, submitted by Francisco Figueroa, and then knocked out by Jeffrey Molina. That's never a good look there. 4 losses in a row, and I mean, let's cut to the chase here. I won't make this one a long one. Both dudes 27 years old. I really have liked what I've seen from Edgar Cháirez. And it's also worth noting, you take a look at his 2 losses as of recently against Clayton Carpenter, who's a stud, a guy that you really need to take note of in the division, and then against Tatsuro Taira. You definitely need to take note of him as well. Those are 2 very, very highly talented up-and-coming fighters in the division. So in between that, 2 submission victories, which, a point I always bring up when we talk about Cháirez is that he's a well-rounded fighter, man. He could definitely hold his own on the feet. He's a scrappy striker, as we saw when he was throwing down with Carpenter. I think he has some solid striking skills, but he has proven, if you take a look at his resume, he can go out there and submit you as well. He's a well-rounded fighter. I like him in this spot. I really like him in this spot. He's going to have a little bit of a size advantage as well. Not much, but a little bit of a size advantage. I believe he'll have about a 1-inch height advantage at least. About a 1-inch height advantage and about a 2-inch reach advantage. Just more things going his way. 6 subs, 4 knockouts out of his 10 victories. He's an absolute fight finisher, and I think you guys know which way I'm going with this. I have Edgar Cháirez getting the finish in this fight. I don't see this fight going to a decision. The crowd's going to be rooting on Edgar all the way. I think that this fight is a fight where they really clash. The only thing I would caution you is that Lacerda, early on, you watch tape at him. I mean, he throws some sharp strikes at times. I mean, he can be potentially dangerous, but I don't know. It just doesn't really ever seem to go his way. Like I've said, in 3 subs, 2 knockouts out of his 11 victories, almost half of his wins coming by way of finish. But I'm not too impressed, and I think that he will fizzle. He'll fade. He'll throw some heavy shots, but he'll just be a little bit out of range, or he'll slightly miss. He'll get countered with the big shot. I think that he folds up, and I got Edgar Cháirez winning that fight there. Edgar Cháirez on Jazz Sports opened up as a -219 on September 5th. We've seen that line kind of just dilly-dallying around until it kind of dips, and now it's at right around a -250. So he's creeping up on that -300 line. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a -300, about a 3-1 favor going into this fight. Another very high line, and understandable. It's understandable, and I think that's where the line should be. So a possible parlay piece I would look at, or see what kind of line you can get on that finish prop, because I do believe Edgar gets him out of there one way or another. In the middleweight division, we have Roman Kopylov representing Russia, taking on Josh Fremd representing the United States. Roman Kopylov, I want to talk about him for a second. This is a fighter that I definitely have to say that I was wrong about. Back in the day, this was a fighter, he came into the UFC, took a very disappointing loss, and a loss that I just found to be very, very questionable, if you guys remember that, where he was submitted by Carl Robertson. I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been an head and arm triangle choke. I forget exactly what the submission was. Got submitted in the 3rd round. Really didn't look all that good in that fight in general. That fight was 4 years ago. He was 28 at the time. That was his UFC debut. I thought that he was just a fighter that had a very padded record as he worked into the UFC, and I just didn't have any faith in him. I had a huge parlay. If you guys remember that UFC 267 card is the one I believe it was. I believe that was in Russia, I believe. I had a huge parlay with Albert Duryov and Khamzat Chimaev. I believe that was the card, but I was stressing out like crazy. And in retrospect, and that fight played out a lot closer than it needed to. It was kind of crazy. A lot of blood was in the cage, and it was a very weird fight, if you guys remember, with the referee and all that. If Kopylov was to get a rematch with Duryov, I guarantee you Kopylov would go out there and get the job done. Duryov ended up being not nearly as good of a fighter as I thought that he was going to be, and Kopylov ended up being a much better fighter than I thought he was going to be. Just to kind of Go back to that. He's now on a 3-fight winning streak, all 3 via knockout, knocking out Alessio De Chirico, Punalehi Seriano, and Claudio Ribeiro. Hit Ribeiro with that nasty head kick. I just feel that this dude Kopylov is very well-rounded. He's extremely tough. As we even saw in the loss against Duryov, he just continues to come forward, fighting out of that southpaw stance, throws head kicks up the top, up towards the top as well, works the legs, heavy-handed. He's a good fighter, man. I really think he's a good fighter, and I think he's a fighter that you have to keep an eye on right now in the middleweight division. As you guys know, I believe it's a very shallow division. It's wide open right now. He's a fighter that he gets a knockout per se this weekend, and then gets another big victory, and the next thing you know, he's working his way towards the top of the division. I think that could happen very quickly with a fighter like Kopylov. He's good. He's a good fighter. Okay. Josh Fremd. Josh Fremd is not a bad fighter as well. I'm not a big fan of Josh Fremd's striking. He's a rangy fighter with a 76-inch wingspan. He'll have a 1-inch reach advantage, but nothing really going on there. Kopylov is the more polished striker. I expect him to have a good edge there. If Josh Fremd is going to have to make this fight ugly, he's going to have to try to use some grappling to get the better of Roman, in my opinion. And Roman has seemed to be pretty damn well there. He defends the takedowns pretty well, and he's a good fighter. And I think that you got to lean towards Kopylov's way. If you want to point something out good towards Josh Fremd, went to a decision with Jamie Pickett. I was not impressed with him. He was a huge favorite. A lot of people wanted him to go out there and get the finish, and he didn't really show up there. You could point towards the Cedriques Dumas fight, which Dumas looked very good after that. And after that fight, and you could say, okay, the way he went out there and submitted him, he looked pretty good. But before that, submitted by Tresean Gore, lost the decision to Anthony Hernandez. He's a good fighter. Was knocked out by Gregory Rodriguez over an LFA. We know he's the truth. He's been in there with some good fighters, man. Bruno Oliveira, Antonio Jones. There's some recognizable names, and he's had some good performances. But let's cut to the chase here. Roman Kopylov is a fighter that I think is going to be making some noise in the division, and I think that he bloodies up Josh Fremd. I think he gets the clear advantage of the striking exchanges. That's something to keep an eye on. He opens up as a minus 238. He is now a minus 357. So another high line, a line that's trending to even go even higher, but it's understandable. This dude's the real deal. And you also note Kopylov only submitted, I believe, submitted one time. Exactly. He has a decision loss. He was submitted one time, which we already talked about, the Carl Robertson submission loss. But I think that he has cleaned things up in a major way since that fight. Give me Roman Kopylov. We take a look at Fremd's losses. Was submitted once, knocked out once. He's proven to be pretty tough. He's a tough outing as far as going out there and finishing him. Roman's on fire right now. 3 knockouts in a row. Would not be surprised, to say the least, if he goes out there and gets a knockout. I'll say maybe he gets a TKO here. Maybe a late TKO. I'll say Kopylov with the late TKO. How about that? Over to the strawweight division. We have another women's mixed martial arts bout on the card. Another good fight, too. Lupita Godinez taking on Elise Reed. Let's go take a look at my old lady there, man. Lupita. May we not forget, Lupita came through in a major way for me in her last fight. As you guys know, I had an 8-unit max play on her to get the job done, and she went out there, and in my opinion, she took every round against Emily Ducote. So I was very, very pleased with her performance. She fought an intelligent fight. She didn't just go in there and get reckless. She went in there and she just did what she needed to do to snag all those rounds up, mixing in the wrestling with her striking. I think she's a very well-rounded fighter. We saw her go out there and edge out Cynthia Calvillo before that. She lost to Angela Hill, but victories over Ariane Cornelosi and Luma Lukmunmi, that's another big victory there. The one questionable loss was the Luana Carolina fight, and that was a fight where she was very undersized, and that fight was kind of matched up last minute, and it just was an off night for her. Jessica Penne also defeated her. That was a split decision loss. I thought that she won that fight, but it wasn't a good look how she made her debut there, and she was a major favorite. And Jessica Penne was coming off a very long layoff, an aged fighter, and she let Penne hang around enough. If we're going to be honest, I already cashed that 8-unit maxer at great odds and it's already in my pocket. I will say that Lupita is there to be hit a little bit. We saw that in her LFA championship fight even before she came into the UFC against Vanessa Demopoulos, where they were brawling it out. There was blood everywhere. Even though she was getting the better of those exchanges, she is there to be hit. And Elise Reed is a fighter that actually has better striking than a lot of you guys give her credit for. I really do believe that. I think that she is somewhat live to go out here and to land on the feet. And I think that if they also go tit for tat on the feet, I could see her edging out a decision. Okay. So, even though I've been praising, Lupita so much, I want to really call this fight how I see it, man. The more I'm breaking down tape, I think, like I said, Elise Reed is very quick with her hands. Now, she has questionable performances here and there, especially when it comes to her takedown defense, like we saw against Jar Eubanks, where Eubanks went out there and smashed her, or Sam Hughes went out there and just, straight up ground and pound smashed her down on the mat in the third round. She was also submitted by Loma Likbumi. So, the real question mark I have in regards to Elise Reed is the grappling. I think that if Lupi fights an intelligent fight like she has been known to do, she'll mix in the takedowns, and she will get this fight down to the mat, and I think that she could really have some success there. If she falls in love with brawling out in the feet or just striking it out on the feet, I think that this fight could definitely slip out of her hands, okay? So I'm warning you now. But that being said, Lupi is my pick here, and I think that, like I said, Lupi, she's a professional, and I think that there's also, man, the potential that she goes out here and really just shines. And I want to point something out too. She's 30 years old. She's entering the prime of her career. We know about the wrestling pedigree that she's had. I believe she's represented her country on the national stage, and just understand all that as well. So big props to my girl Lupi again for coming through for me on that maxer. But now look at this line here. She's a minus 476 favorite on my bookie. She's a huge favorite on every book. Opened as a minus 416. So action going her way as well. That's a very steep line. I'm telling you guys right now, it's a steep line. And especially when you think about the line I grabbed on her in her last fight against Ducote. Boy, did I love that line. This line's very different. And I'm not really crazy about even throwing it in a parlay, because I'm telling you, I think there's a recipe for upset. There's a recipe for an upset in regards to Elise Reed. Again, I think that she will land on the feet. Okay, I'm just warning you guys right now. So Lupita better have success with the grappling, and Elise Reed has been working on her takedown defense, as she knows that's been the one big red flag in her UFC career. So she's been working on that nonstop. That's a dangerous recipe. If a fighter's working on that specific avenue nonstop, you're going to see growth there. So yes, give me Lupita Godinez, but the line is off in my opinion. I think there's value on Elise Reed. Fernando Padilla makes his return to the cage, taking out Kyle Nelson. In case you guys forgot the performance that Padilla just put out in his last fight against Julian Erosa, boy, what a fight that was. He got the first round knockout. He was instantly willing to engage in a firefight with Julian Erosa. And really, he's been going out there just finishing fights throughout his career now. I mean, this is a kid that's 26 years old. He already has 19 pro fights, 5 knockouts, 8 submissions as well. He's very dangerous with his grappling. Kyle Nelson's a fighter that could put you out as well. And I think that, the fight that he had back in the day where he went out there and knocked out Marco Polo Reyes in the first round, that always showcased the type of power that he has. Now he's a little slower, but he has that power. He kind of reminds you of, like, if you guys know what I'm talking about, man, when you're in the gym and you got one of your older trainers, a guy that's been around the block in the gym, has a couple different black belts and different types of martial arts. And when he's on top of you, you really feel that old man strength and that weight on you. Kind of reminds me of one of those types of dudes. He has that kind of body. He's not necessarily the most chiseled guy. But I believe he's a head coach at a small gym, I believe. And you know what, man, he's a tough dude. Like I said, 5 knockouts, 4 subs. That's 9 finishes out of his 14 victories. He is more of a fight finisher, even though as of recently that hasn't necessarily been the case. Had a decision victory over Blake Builder as of recently. And note that was a loss against Doo Ho Choi. They deducted a point against Choi in the third round for a headbutt. It was a bad call, and Choi did win 2 of those 3 rounds. Before that, he also lost to Jai Herbert, got knocked out by Billy Q. We talked about the big knockout victory he had against Marco Polo Reyes. You date back to the next 2 losses where he was submitted by Matt Sales and then knocked out by Diego Ferreira. This is a guy that's only really won 2 of his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fights, okay? All right, he's a tough dude. The UFC obviously has his number on call. They're willing to throw him in the cage and try to put on some fun fights with him. And he's been lucky enough to hang around as long as he has. But Fernando, this is a kid that has all the potential in the world to be a long-time UFC fighter. He's 26 years old. I think this is a fighter that could be representing Mexico in the octagon for a long time to come. He's a real treat to watch, even outside the UFC, right? Don't just look at that UFC debut he had. This is a fighter that outside the UFC has been putting on some real real fun performances, man. He's been going out there and finishing dudes. So I think you guys know which way I'm going with this fight here. I think that Padilla is going to be much faster than Nelson. I think he's gonna work Nelson. The only thing that I worry about is if Padilla looks to make this so much of a firefight that he slips up and gets capitalized on by Nelson, and Nelson cracks him with a big shot. All right, this is still the fight game. They're wearing small gloves, and Nelson does possess some power. That's the way that I could see Nelson potentially shaking things up here. And listen, it wouldn't be the first time that he knocked out a Mexican fighter, just as he did, again, the fight that we talked about earlier where he went out there and knocked out Marco Polo Reyes. So he does have a little bit more maturity as far as the age goes, but Padilla is my pick. And, you take a look at Nelson's 5 losses, 2 via knockout, 1 via sub. So the majority of them by finish, but he has proven to be a pretty tough dude. I've seen Nelson take some tough lickings in the cage and come forward. He's a tough dude. Padilla with the 5-inch reach advantage. He's much more rangy. He's skilled. He's wiry and skilled. I like Padilla here. Does he get the finish? That's the question mark in my eyes. Does Padilla get that finish? He's a big favorite over on my bookie. Opened as a minus 250, was a 285, stepping back towards a minus 263, which still, he's a big favorite here. I could see the finish easily. I could. Nelson has been finished. Padilla is going to make this a firefight. He is going to try to put on a show for the fans. This is on the main card. I would say that there's a very realistic possibility Padilla gets the finish. I'll edge him for a finish. How about that? I just think that there's going to be so much action going on in the cage here. I think that someone will be vulnerable to being finished in this fight. And again, I wouldn't be shocked if Nelson landed a big shot himself with his hands. A little bit more of a stiff boxing type of style. Has some heavy leg kicks. He does have heavy leg kicks, but give me Fernando Padilla, the youngster, to get the job done. In a firefight, he gets a wild finish. How about that? We got my dog, my fellow Greek-American Christos Giagos, taking on Daniel Zellhuber here. Fight taking place in the lightweight division. First and foremost, my boy Christos coming off a huge victory where he went out there and really showcased the growth with his boxing and his striking skills. Knocked out Ricky Glenn very quickly. Before that, did have a loss where he was submitted against Thiago Moises, the very dangerous submission player there. The very dangerous BJJ player. Before that, he was knocked out by Arman Sarukian. In my eyes, Arman Sarukian may possibly be the uncrowned champion of the division. So understand that. Submitted Sean Seriano before that. Absolutely tossed Carlton Manus around the cage. Decision loss to Jakar Close before that. Beat Damir Hasnovic before that. And Mizuto Hirota. And then before that, he was submitted by Charles Oliveira. You take a look at his losses, man. Are these losses not some high-caliber losses? Charles Oliveira, Arman Sarukian, Thiago Moises, okay? Understand that they've been throwing Giagos to the fire for some time. As he showed in his last fight, he is a solid fighter. The thing I love about Giagos is that he's a very well-rounded fighter. He has the wrestling background. His striking has really been sharpening up. He's put in a lot of work with Henry Hooft. He's been training over there with Team Killcliff FC, it's called now. He's been over there with them for a while, though, as they changed the name of their gym a couple times. I'm telling you, he's been training with some of the best fighters on planet Earth, and that carries some serious weight as he enters the prime of his career. You see him brushing shoulders with Jason Jackson. This dude's an absolute stud fighting out of the UFC. It's a shame he's not in the UFC. But he trains with all those guys, man. I'm telling you right now, he surrounds himself with all those guys, okay? On the other hand, you got Daniel Zellhuber, who is a very talented young kid with a crazy frame for the division. He's going to have a huge reach advantage here. Almost a 6-inch reach advantage. I think it's a 5.5-inch reach advantage. He's taller by a couple inches, by 3 inches. If he's able to use that length from the outside, I do believe he can give Giagos some issues. We have seen Giagos landed on a little bit here and there throughout his career. He's a very tough fighter. He's willing to take a couple shots, try to land a big shot on you. But where Giagos really thrives, and again, this is even dating to outside the UFC. You want to pull up a sick fight. I believe it's on YouTube. You take a look at this fight here. He was fighting over in Russia, where he He says that he lost to Shamil Nikayev. He won that fight. It was a split decision loss over in Moscow. He won that fight. That fight was crazy. It was an absolute war. He thrives in those types of fights. So understand, I believe he definitely won that fight. And then also, he was knocked out by Josh Emmett. I mean, look at the level of competition of these fighters. His first stint in the UFC was a loss to Gilbert Burns, lost to Chris Wade and Josh Emmett. I mean, these are all stud fighters, okay? So just understand, if you're not the cream of the crop, it might be a little bit of a different story compared to what some of you guys think when you're talking Christos Giagos. He is in his prime right now. Daniel Zellhuber just had a very questionable performance when he went out there and fought Trey Ogin. Was not surprised. I mean, not impressed with his performance there. I know he bounced back with a nice victory over Lando Venata. Venata is aged, and he's a little flaky at times. Giagos is going to be different, man. If Zellhuber doesn't put him out, if he doesn't land a big shot early on and this fight ends up being a war, Giagos can take this fight. I'm letting you guys know that right now, okay? Let's go take a look at the betting line, where you're going to see Giagos is a pretty big underdog. Right now, Giagos as big as a plus 215 underdog. Open as a plus 175 on Bovada, with action going the other way. I think Giagos is a very live dog here. I do understand that Zellhuber is a very dangerous fighter. A very nasty striker. He's a well-rounded fighter. He's working on his overall craft. He will have the crowd behind him. Another very talented Mexican fighter on the card. But you guys know I'm rolling with my boy Giagos here, and I'm not just saying that as a biased pick. I'm telling you guys, okay, it's very realistic that Zellhuber goes out there and gets the job done, obviously. I think this line's off. I think that Giagos should be much more close to a pick 'em. Maybe you want to argue, if you analyze some things, maybe you can argue that Giagos should be like a plus 125, 135, but I think Giagos is more than live here. I'm picking him to win this fight, and there's a lot of value on him, okay? The same way he came in as an underdog in his last fight against Ricky Glenn. Don't be surprised if he lands a big shot early on, and don't be surprised if he thrives in an absolute war, okay? Gotta roll with my boy here. You guys know, Giagos, always showed love to the channel, interviewed him twice. He always shows love on IG. It's funny, he actually... I left my old neighborhood from back in the day. It's funny, he moved all the way from California, moved to my neighborhood that I grew up in. It's funny, he lives over there now, and which is obviously close to Team Killcliff FC and all that. And he's a dude that is very diligent as far as the work he puts in. Give me Christos Giagos to get the job done, and that fight can go a variety of ways. It might be a crazy decision war. He might finish Zellhuber. I know Zellhuber has never been finished, but Zellhuber has been prone to be landed on a little bit. I'll edge Christos Giagos, though, and in a war, I'll say he wins maybe a split decision or a close decision victory. In the bantamweight division, we got the young buck, Raul Rosas Jr., taking on Terrence Mitchell. Let's cut to the chase here. I'm not going to go too long on this video, or on this segment here. Raul Rosas Jr. is getting a layup here. He is coming off his first ever professional loss, where he lost to Christian Rodriguez. C-Rod, one of the more underrated fighters, man. That he's a very talented up-and-coming kid. Before that, he submits Jay Perrin. And you guys know what Raul has been doing. He had the victory over Mando Gutierrez on DWCS, where he really uses grappling. This kid, Raul Rosas Jr., pushes the pace like no other, man. This kid has a gas tank like very few. I mean, he's a young kid. I mean, imagine, some of you guys probably are still 18, but, things change as you get older, all right? I know a lot of you guys, things change in a variety of ways, man, but you're full of testosterone when you're at 18 years old. And I think that is obviously it is an advantage. Okay. Now, he doesn't have all the knowledge and the wisdom that you get as you get older and from performing and fighting, long term, but he also is a fighter that's been deeply involved in the sport of MMA from a very young age, right? I believe his father was some type of fighter. I mean, he's been fighting mixed martial arts bouts since he was just in his early teens, I believe, even before that possibly. I mean, he's just a career mixed martial artist. So understand that even though he's 18, his experience goes much deeper than that. Terrence Mitchell, 33 years old. This dude, man, has an extremely padded record. Does Terrence Mitchell. Terrence Mitchell is coming off a first-round knockout loss against Cameron Seman. And I think that the UFC is just using Terrence just to be a little bit of a step for these young and up-and-coming prospects. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. They're giving Terrence his opportunity to try to prove himself. And you can also argue that he's a fighter that shouldn't even be fighting in the UFC. So you know what? You can't really hate on that. He's getting an opportunity. If he could shock the world, he can make some money and hang around. Remember, he fought on, I think it was The Ultimate Fighter, right? Back in the day, he was knocked out in devastating fashion on The Ultimate Fighter against Cháirez France. And again, just an extremely padded resume. He is a tough kid. He's a tough, wiry kid, but Raul Rosas Jr., I believe Raul Rosas Jr. is going to submit him. How about that? I'm taking Raul Rosas Jr. to push the pace with the grappling and catch him in a submission. And big shout out to my boy Raul Rosas Jr. I'm a big fan of his, as you guys know. I love that we're able to see him get into the cage from a very early age, and we get to see his journey for years to come. And I see a lot of you guys hating on him for his physical appearance, and I'm not really with that. I don't really like that energy. I think he's a cool dude, and like I said, man, he has almost 500,000 followers on IG now. He's got the world by the balls, and all you guys that are making fun of him, it's not even a question that he can bag way more bitches than you guys. So Raul Rosas Jr. is now a minus 769 favorite. Oh, you see that? That's the fantasies ringing off right now. Shout out to the Miami Dolphins, and shout out to winning my first week in fantasy football. Raul Rosas Jr. is almost an 8-1 favorite at this point. He's a huge favorite. He opened as a minus 434. It's a crazy line. He's going to win the fight. Maybe look at a submission prop. Maybe look at a first round submission prop and see if you can get some type of value on a line there. Otherwise, you just sit back and watch this. This is a crazy line, and you don't want to be touching nothing up here. If you can get it back in the 600s, maybe use it as a leg in a parlay. But that line is absurd, and the crowd will be back in the young buck, and he is the future of Mexican mixed martial arts. Trust me, even though he's coming off that loss, he has a very, very promising career ahead of him. Wait till you see how he looks when he's 26 years old. All right, give me Raul Rosas Jr. via first round submission. Now, you guys know I'm loving this matchup here. I love to see the UFC match Kevin Holland up with some formidable talent. He's taking on Della Maddalena. You guys know I believe he is one of the nastiest strikers in the game right now. Okay, Kevin Holland, obviously a very dangerous striker in his own right. And listen, I understand that Kevin Holland has been in there with some serious fighters, but he also gets a lot of layups. Okay, let's be clear. Okay, coming off victories against an old Michael Chiesa that was coming off a long layoff. Santiago Ponzinibbio, tough outing, but a very aged fighter. The Khamzat fight, that's where he got thrown to the wolves. Stephen Thompson, he's an old fighter, man. And obviously I was there. I saw that fight live, but Thompson, a great fighter in his day. I don't think Thompson is it. I think that Thompson's going to get finished coming up. In fact, I had Michel Pereira to defeat him, and I had an official play in that. Unfortunately, that fight fell through. Thompson's too old, man. I'm telling you guys right now, he's going to get knocked out. He's going to get grappled up. He's going to start to lose a lot of fights. That wasn't a good performance by Holland. Obviously, Khamzat finished him in seconds. He has these layups. Tim Means, very old. Alex Oliveira is losing over on the regional scene now as he's been cut by the UFC. All right, so he should have been knocked out by Carl Dawkins, lost to Marvin Vettori, lost to Derek Brunson. He's had some big wins in age. Jacare Souza knocked him out in phenomenal fashion. Charlie Ontiveros, that poor kid, left his job over at Circle K, where he was serving old lady cigarettes, and then had to step in and get finished up real quick. Listen, the Joaquin Buckley was a big knockout victory. The Anthony Hernandez was a big knockout victory. You guys know I'm not the biggest fan of Holland, but listen, he is a talented fighter. He has his occasional big wins, but I love to see him in these types of matchups. I want to see him evenly matched with someone that's really going to bring the fight to him. And Jack Della Maddalena is that 100%. I've been so impressed with the striking display that he's been putting on in his last couple fights. If you understand what you're watching and you see how he slips and slides just inches away from the opposition strikes and then lands his own stuff just so ferociously. This dude, he's so technical. I really think you're going to see him have some big-time highlight reel knockouts over the next couple of years. He is the truth. I know there was some controversy about his last fight where he struggled a little bit with the takedown defense. Don't think that will be an issue whatsoever against Holland. I'll let you guys know that right now. And I think that he went back to the drawing board. He probably worked on that, and he'll even be better there. Only 27 years old. And let me be very clear. He absolutely won that fight against Basil Hafayez. Okay? Basil showed up in a major way. He was a huge underdog and big props to him for the performance, for keeping that fight closely. But you guys weren't paying attention to the damage that Jack was landing throughout that fight. Okay, he was taken down here and there. When he got up, he was landing brutal shots, mixes things up, works the body. I cannot wait to watch the display of striking that he's going to go out there and put on against Holland. Now, that being said, Holland's a dangerous striker in his own right, and if you come in recklessly, or like I said, Jack Della likes to just slide out of strikes by just mere inches and whatnot, you've got a guy in Holland that has a crazy wingspan, and he knows how to close the distance. Or I wouldn't even say close the distance. He's just so rangy that his fists will close that distance. It's obviously going to be a dangerous job for Jack Della to face. Okay, Kevin Holland he's a good fighter, man. Listen, you guys know I like to poke fun here and there, but Holland's a good fighter. He does have some submission skills as well. I believe he's a black belt under Travis Lutter. He's been training with Lutter for a long time. Lutter, an excellent jiu-jitsu guy back in his day. And I think that if Holland was smart, he should go out there and look to grapple it up. I know he has an 8-inch reach advantage. I ain't worried about that. Jack will close the distance. Jack will be the fighter landing the more dangerous strikes. And I could see Jack Della Maddalena getting a knockout here. You take a look at Kevin Holland's lengthy pro resume. He's only been knocked out once, showing that he is very defensively talented with his movement and whatnot. Jack's a different breed, though. Don't be surprised if you see that knockout. All in all, though, I think that Jack gets the fight done one way or another. It could be a decision victory. I think he just clearly gets the better of the striking exchanges, and I don't have any faith in Kevin Holland using his wrestling and grappling to try to solidify those rounds. And I think that Jack's been working on those aspects of his game coming off the last fight. And I think that Basil Hafez was actually underrated. That dude is a big dude. He's very physically strong. You saw the gas tank that he possesses training over in Colorado. He's a wrestler. He has that wrestling background. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Don't underestimate who Hafez was and think that Jack's just a slouch there, okay? Give me Jack Della Maddalena. Let's go take a look at the betting odds and see how my boy is looking. Jack is a -153 on my bookie. Open up as a +106. Action coming his way. I think people are understanding who Jack is, man. Watch the tape. Go rewatch that Hafez fight. Go rewatch that fight and watch how electrifying his striking is and how matrixy. Is that a word? I just made that up. Matrixy. It's like Matrix shit, man. And give me my boy Jack. He's going to get that knockout. Let's get that knockout. And you will see the teller on IG chirping it up at MMA Fortune Teller _. And maybe I'll tag Holland in it. And all you haters, they like to come at me. All you Holland backers, we can go at it, all right? Let's go at it. Once again, I'm picking against Holland. Let's go. So there's absolutely no question that the recent performances that Shevchenko has put out there have not been as impressive as the early fights in her career. I believe there is some question that she is slowing down. She's 35 and a half years old, still looks to be in phenomenal shape, but it's like she's just a little bit slower than she used to be. It's like, and I don't even mean physically slower. It's almost like her mental game. It's like her brain is like a tad bit slower. You see her reaction time. Her reaction time is a tad bit slower. She's still a phenomenal fighter. You guys know I had her at one point in time as the pound for pound best women's fighter, and I don't believe that to be the case at this point in time. With the questionable performance against Santos and then getting choked out by Grasso, she has her back against the wall there. I mean, that's just, she still has some time if she goes out, finishes her career just running through girls left and right. I mean, don't forget Nunes was also just recently finished, but listen, I'm not as high on her as I once was. You guys know she's a phenomenal Muay Thai striker. She has grappling skills as well. Alexa Grasso, she's a dangerous striker in her own right, has some nasty kickboxing skills. She's 30 years old. We've seen this girl grow up right in front of our eyes, right? I mean, you think about her UFC debut against Heather Clark, the Felice Herrig fight. That's where she came in as a pretty big favorite and dropped the ball. She was learning on the job, man. That was 6 years ago. She was 24 years old. She was so young. And, she's been in there with some real talent. Defeated Randa Marcos, always a tough fighter. Lost to Tatiana Suarez. She fought Karolina Kovacevic, Carla Esparza, Macy Barber, Joanne Wood. I mean, she's fought in a lot of fighters, man. She's learning, and she's getting better and better, and she's going right into the prime of her career. Coming off a win against Valentina Shevchenko, her confidence has to be at an all-time high. That being said, run the tape back on that last fight. I mean, Valentina was on her way to winning the fight. She made a mental error in there. Again, we talked about the delay and with her her IQ in the cage at times, right? There's like a little bit of a pause, and that's what cost her the fight against Grasso. She gave up her back and she was submitted there, and she was excuse me, we'll pull that up, and she was submitted via rear naked choke, as you guys remember, 6 months ago. Okay, okay. That being said, if she didn't make that mental mistake, obviously Valentina wins that fight. Okay, so the thing is, if you're backing Alexa Grasso here, you have to expect that she's gonna make some major jumps, because if she doesn't get that finish, is she going to be able to go out there and win rounds against Shevchenko? I don't think so. I don't. I think that Shevchenko gets the better of the striking exchanges. She edges those out. I think that she is going to be sharper than ever, or not sharper than ever, but sharper than she was last time with her grappling and just her awareness and being able to avoid that situation. And maybe she doesn't force the grappling as much, and she uses her Muay Thai, uses her kicks more from the outside. One other thing is that's a little different with this fight is now Grasso comes in as the champion. Grasso will have the crowd support, and I think that could be a little bit of an influence if this fight plays out closely. That could be a problem. You can maybe see Grasso retain her belt. Okay, that's something you do have to worry about. But that being said, when you're talking about Valentina Shevchenko, you're talking about a different type of beast. This is a girl. You guys know what she's about, man. She travels the world. She trains her whole entire life. She's just so sharp in so many different ways, not even with just fighting. And you see her with the sharpshooting and all this stuff that she does, and she's just a freak. She really is a freak. And I expect, she's always been an extremely motivated fighter. Just imagine how she was with this camp and going into this rematch. I think she's as hungry as ever. She feels like age is catching up to her, and I don't think that she likes that feeling. And I think that she left not one stone unturned, and I think that we might even see a finish here, maybe a head kick knockout, maybe something nasty, some ground and pound type finish. Maybe she gets her own sub. I got Valentina Shevchenko to win this fight, and I think there's a very, very realistic possibility that Shevchenko gets the finish over Grasso, although I wouldn't say I would necessarily bank on that. But I do feel comfortable that she gets her hand raised. So she opened up as a minus 243 favorite, was as high as a minus 256, with the line trending the other way, which is good if you're targeting Shevchenko. You want to wait on that line. Maybe that action continues to come in on Grasso. You can even get a better line. When's the last time you've seen a line like this next to Valentina Shevchenko's name, right? You got to go a while back. Valentina Shevchenko comes in always as a huge favorite. If you're as much of a believer in her as I am, this is a bargain line. I like Valentina Shevchenko to get the job done. To take that, if you want to call it a fluke loss, take it how you want it, call it what you want it. But I think that there's a possibility you're getting a real bargain line here. Give me Valentina Shevchenko to snatch her belt back up. And as far as champions getting immediate rematches, if you want to go over the last immediate rematches that we've had as of recently, there's no real lean, I don't think. I was going over the numbers, and it's really been kind of split. There's been guys that went out there like Leon Edwards and has won again the second time around. We've also seen guys like Izzy go back in the rematch and get the victory, snatch his belt back. We've seen a lot of that, a lot of both ways. So, but Shevchenko is a different beast. She's going to be one that's on the side of snatching that belt back. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. I'm not going to give you guys the big in-depth parting words. I'm getting this video out late to you guys. Hopefully a good amount of you guys even tuned in. I know it's a little bit later in the week. I know you guys like to see these videos earlier, and I'll save some of the good things I've been thinking about, because I got some new stuff to talk about with you guys. We'll save that for some of the big cards coming up. The Jones versus Miocic card. I'll give you guys some real life advice there. You guys, you know you love your teller advice at the end of these videos. I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you haven't, and please go check me out on my social media, on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _, on Twitter at the MMA Teller. Hope you guys all are having a beautiful, blessed week, and I hope everything's great with all you guys. All right, signing out, Teller.
Welcome to the show. This the MMA Fortune Teller. Yeah.
The MMA Fortune Teller.
The teller.